Welcome to Live Well, Dream Big. I'm Suzanne Monroe, founder of the International Association of Wellness Professionals, where I've been teaching people how to live a life of wellness, tap into their passion, and go for their dreams for over 15 years. I believe living well and dreaming big starts with ourselves. This podcast will show you how to create a healthy, holistic life, empower your mindset, follow your dreams, and make a big impact. Let's dive in right now. Welcome to Live Well, Dream Big. In today's episode, I'm talking about the mindset of purpose. And it's one of the 12 empowered mindsets that I love to teach about to help you to really master your own mindset and stay empowered. In this episode, I'm going to share some personal stories with you, like how I struggled for years to figure out my own purpose and what I'm still working on today. So if you think your purpose is about the work that you do every day, then I invite you to listen in and discover what your true purpose might be all about. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be talking with you today about an important topic, empowering yourself through your purpose. Today, we're talking about the mindset of purpose, including why finding your purpose matters and how to uncover your purpose in life. Now, I looked up the definition of certain words here that make up our topics. That's what I usually always like to do, and to kind of get us grounded in what we're actually talking about. And according to dictionary.com, purpose has sort of two definitions. One is a noun, which is the reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. And then there's a verb, which is the purpose is defined as having an intention or objective. And I think it's actually a great starting point for our conversation today because it comes back to the reason something is being done, the reason something exists, and the intention behind it, right? And I'm going to change that up a little bit just to focus a little bit more on ourselves, right? Because it's like the reason you are here, the reason you exist, and maybe your intention in this world. And then that gets things pretty heavy pretty fast, right? Because when we decide we want to know our purpose, and the very reason for existence is like, oh, wait, this is getting kind of loaded, right? But I think that angle alone makes us sometimes feel like finding our purpose is a little bit challenging, right? There's just a lot of pressure. It's like, I must know why I am here and then do that. I don't know if anybody out there has felt that way before about their own purpose. I know I personally spent years in total frustration, just wondering what my purpose was. You know, I used to go off to work every day doing something I didn't love and just really wondering day in and day out what my purpose was. It was kind of like always in the background, like no matter what I was doing, I just felt really stuck. And I don't think a light bulb ever went on and everything just changed. As I reflect about it now, it really was more of a journey. And what I think we don't always realize is that finding our purpose really can be a lifelong journey, right? And maybe the purpose of finding our purpose is supposed to be a journey. I knew for me, going off to a job I didn't love every day sure didn't feel like my purpose, right? But the funny thing was, looking back now, many years later, every step in my journey that I thought, oh my gosh, this is not my purpose. This is not in alignment with my purpose. Whatever it was actually in some way part of the process to lead me to my purpose. But I didn't realize it at the time. So for example, like 15 years ago, over 15 years ago, when I was working in the pharmaceutical industry, I was talking about prescription medications, right? When in my personal life, I was passionate about holistic health and natural healing and herbs and supplements, organic food, right? Everything wellness. I sure didn't feel like I was on the right track. Like my day-to-day living just didn't feel in alignment with me, right? So I felt really out of touch with my purpose, really out of alignment with my purpose. But the truth is, working in that job actually was a step along my journey that led me to my purpose. For one reason, I got to kind of see behind the scenes of healthcare, and it created this really energy in me to want to learn more, to kind of find another way, and just knowing that there was a better way. And what did that look like? This ultimately led me to shifting careers and going into wellness instead of what I call sickness, right? So in a way, it was tied to my purpose though, because without that job and those experiences, I may never have found this path where today, over a decade plus later, I have the privilege and honor really to lead thousands of people across the globe to finding wellness and creating lives they love where they can inspire others to live well, right? But at the time, I just remember being so frustrated some days and really stuck and actually really sad, right? Because I just didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I felt like maybe this was all there was to life. But if my older self could have talked to my younger self, I would have told her that this was all part of the journey, right? Like you are right where you're supposed to be right now. So if anybody out there feels at all stuck on their journey, maybe just wondering what your purpose is, consider if perhaps you're right where you're supposed to be right now. Like if you knew that, if you had that knowing, I feel like sometimes it would go a little bit differently because life works in funny ways, you know? When we talk about the mindset of purpose, what that means to me is really aligning yourself with this idea of being open to possibilities, to be open to exploring, and to be curious about what is actually happening to you right now, even when it doesn't feel like exactly what you want. What if it's all meant to be to lead you to whatever's next, right? And our live listeners out there today who are joining us for this episode are all holistic wellness coaches in training. And I know so many of you are on the path to your purpose now that you're here, right? And maybe you went on a healing journey of your own and now you want to share that with others, or maybe you overcame a chronic health issue or challenge and you want to help others. Maybe you helped a family member or friend, but something ignited your passion for wellness and brought you to this next step to fulfilling your purpose and ultimately going on to become a holistic wellness coach. But if you think back, and maybe for you, it was just a few months ago, or maybe it was years ago, or maybe it's happening right now. But if you look back at whatever that challenge was at the time, you probably weren't like jumping up and down and celebrating it as a step closer to your purpose, right? You're not like, yay, I have this chronic illness, or, I'm totally lost, or whatever it is, right? Because we don't do that. But that's what the mindset of purpose is about, is kind of seeing this bigger picture, this bigger vision, and knowing that this journey is kind of here. And yeah, we get to make choices on that journey, but maybe some of it's a little bit orchestrated too, to kind of keep pushing us one step further. But if that was you, you're probably dealing with some really tough stuff, especially if you did have a health challenge that couldn't be solved by anybody, right? You had to go on your own journey to find some answers. So now on the other end, being a coach and training here at the IAWP, you might be like, okay, light bulb, it's all come full circle. This makes sense, right? And for all of our podcast listeners out there, maybe you too have had a journey with something. Maybe you're on it right now and it seems hard and challenging and scary and you don't know what's going to happen next. But if we can keep in mind this idea of our mindset of purpose, right? And this idea of opening up to really what's possible, and what's happening might be a part of that intention, a part of that plan, a part of the reason for which you exist, going back to the definition of purpose, right? And then if we can take all those challenges, and instead of being really stuck or spiraling down to low places or staying in those places for way too long, we can start to try to find purpose in them. Of course, it's easier said than done, and especially given the times we're living in right now, it seems like it would be helpful. It could be helpful to take this information and maybe help us stay a little more grounded during these times, just a little more centered, even if the world seems to be kind of out of control, or maybe we feel out of control, right? Because what can we really do, right? We don't know how things are going to evolve and what's going to change or not change. I think I could have saved myself a lot of heartache and struggle back then. Saying this now, I think applying it today and everything that's happening in the world would be useful. So I'm going to have to try this out and take my own advice and see if this works, right? Because it's so much easier, hindsight is 2020. It's so much easier to look back and be like, oh, I should have done that, right? But when you're living it, that's where you have to really try to bring in the mindset when it's happening in the moment. So I want to shift gears now and share with you my 3 tips for empowering your own mindset of purpose. And whether you've found your purpose in life or you haven't, the mindset of purpose is really about staying in alignment with who you are, no matter what else is coming your way. So tip 1 is to see the difference between purpose and your career. So your purpose and your career are actually 2 different things. I think one of the tricky things in our society, though, is that we spend a lot of time doing our careers. In fact, I think it's some 90,000 hours, or like 1/3 of your life you spend working, which, okay, that's really scary, right? So we have this notion, right, that work is like how we pay our bills and what we do every day. But it's also like a part of us wants how we pay our bills and what we do every day to also be our purpose, right? And it can be, but it also doesn't have to be, right? Of course, if you can align that 1/3 of your time in your life with your purpose, like that's amazing. I mean, I'm so grateful I have that opportunity. And I know many of our coaches in training out there are moving toward that as well. And that is a sweet spot. That's amazing. But your purpose can also be something else entirely, something less vocation related or career related. It's something with less than a title, or it might be more of a way of relating in the world or serving in the world that can show up in any type of career, right? Now, we've all been that kid answering the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And most kids, like, they don't really have the answer to that adult question, right? It kind of keeps getting pushed on them until they finally come up with some canned response that they think is what, they're supposed to be when they grow up. Because you know what? They're not thinking about careers. They're thinking about what they love to do, right? They're in the present moment. And they may have multiple passions, but there's not a label for that, right? You can't fit all the things you love to do as a child into a box necessarily with a label or a job title. Yet as time goes on, we have to try to find a career that sounds like it would work for us, right? You go to your guidance counselor and they try to tell you what your career should be. Maybe you take a passion, you lean more into something that, feels like your passion. You try to look at your passion and then you try to align it with a job that exists. But still, is that really your purpose? I remember really struggling with this. In college, I remember going to a career counselor and trying to get help on like what my life was supposed to look like, what I was supposed to do, what was my major, and what the rest of my life was going to look like when I left campus. And this was just, again, this was a big theme that was really playing in the back of my everyday, even back then. And I left that time in college still not really knowing. I took my first job and, I've told this story before, but I would spend years crying in the bathroom at my first corporate job, knowing that, nope, this wasn't it. This wasn't my purpose, right? I later, and just sharing that now, the funny thing is like, I can still remember that feeling of like leaving my desk and going to the bathroom. Like I could be there right now. It's funny, right? Because there was such despair that like, here I was finally doing what I was supposed to do in life. And this did not feel right. And not knowing how to get out of it really, right? And then I went to a career counselor later again in my adult life, trying to find it. And it just didn't really exist. And so the thing is, the unique magic that you bring into the world isn't necessarily going to fit into a career guide, right? So we have to let go of the idea of our purpose being what we do for a job. Your calling might even be something beyond a job. I will say this. One of the amazing things about the world we live in today and the technology available and the opportunity to connect with people anywhere, to offer our services globally on virtual platforms, to share our messages through our own version of media, right? The possibility to create your own career is there like never before. And the chance to align whatever you're passionate about in a way of connecting with others is just greater than ever before. And that's why I love the coaching field, right? Because no one coach looks exactly alike. Each person has a unique story that they bring to their own work. And coaches really get to design their own careers to align with their purpose and also with how they want to show up every day, right? We all have different skill sets and things that we like to do. And you get to kind of pick and choose when you're designing your own coaching career. But if you're not a coach and you're listening to this and you don't know what career is right for you, what I want you to know is you can still live your purpose, which brings me to tip 2. Your purpose is within. So I think we tend to look for our purpose like out there. You know what I mean? Again, it's tied to career and what we're going to do every day. But what if you knew your purpose was already who you are? You just might not be seeing it yet fully. Let me give you an example. Like, for example, your purpose might be as simple as you are a good listener, right? You allow people the space to share and to hold that space for them. That could align with your career. Of course, becoming a wellness coach, for example, that's a super nice fit with somebody whose purpose is being a good listener and holding the space for others, right? But it could be that you just embrace being a good listener in all that you do. It's like your purpose is your way of showing up in the world. For example, you listen to your coworkers, you listen to your children, you listen to your loved ones, your neighbors. You just embody listening and holding the space for others to be heard in everything you do. So that it doesn't matter necessarily what you're doing. You could be doing anything. It's just that your purpose is being that in whatever you're doing. Now, some of you might think my purpose is my career or what it looks like on the outside, right? As a leader of an international wellness organization, you might guess my purpose is something like to share the message of wellness or to train and teach others to become coaches or to help heal the world, right? All these lofty purposes. And in some ways, yes, that's part of my purpose. Those things are true. But I'll tell you this, it's only been in the last few years that I've fully come to understand my purpose on a different layer. And I'll share with you my purpose, and I'll kind of tell you a little bit more about this. My purpose, as I understand it today, is really to reflect back to others what is possible for them. So to reflect back to others what is possible for them. You know, coming to this realization for me was really a deep dive with some inner work and support that I hope to share with you in a future episode soon. But for now, I'll say this. If my purpose is to reflect back to others what's possible for them, then I can choose to do this anywhere, anytime, right? It's not just 9 to 5 or only when talking to people in my career. And so when I had this realization, it really showed me something. Yes, this is what my work was really all about, but it wasn't just my work. It's who I just am, right? And I saw this connection back to even things I would do as a kid or a young person. I was always the one my friends came to for advice on what they should do to solve a problem. I was always the one wanting to think about things a little bit differently, kind of push people a little further, though they didn't really always like that or want me to do that. The point is here, though, my purpose was already a part of me, and your purpose is already a part of you, right? It's there when you're born, I believe. And I think it shows up as a child before we try to change ourselves to fit into really what others think of us. And sometimes, we forget it along the way or it gets hidden in some way. So if this is my purpose, the thing is, I get to be this all the time. I get to embody this all the time if I choose. And I got to also see how I was not really doing that in some areas of my life. And in those same areas, I kind of felt out of alignment. I wasn't really showing up as this true purpose with family and friends, like in my personal light. In fact, I was even kind of hiding my light, playing small because, well, I get to play big at work. And I really didn't want family members to feel like, okay, this is, too much. But see, this is an old pattern for me of kind of people pleasing or wanting to make sure, I'm not offending others. And so I caught myself, old pattern, there it is again. Because the truth is, if you hide your light, then you're really doing a disservice to others, right? And they don't get to know the real you. And so that's kind of the interesting thing about really figuring out your purpose and seeing where you're bringing it to light and where you're not. So this is a journey. I'm on it, right? I haven't got it all figured out by any means. I'm leaning into it. And it takes practice sometimes to show up fully in all areas of your life, right? Or to remember your purpose at all times and be who you're really meant to be. That's why I say I think our purpose is a lifelong journey. We might figure it out and do it in one area, but how does it play out in who we really are, like the whole of our person? Okay, so quick recap on this tip number 2. Your purpose may or may not be your career, but it surely can show up in what you do every day. I encourage you to take some time to think about your own purpose. You can think about it within your career if that's what you love to do, or if you're on the path to following your passion, but also look a little bit deeper. You might ask yourself, okay, what role do I play in relationships? What themes are in everything I do? What do people always kind of come to me for or say about me? And what did you love to do and say when you were a child? This is the inner work stuff, really, that usually is best done with a cup of tea and a journal and some time and space. Let's move on to tip number 3, empowering your mindset of purpose. Get curious. So I'll say this. One of the things that happened to me when I was in a job, actually many jobs I didn't love, I felt like I had no purpose, was that I made a decision to get curious. So instead of staying stuck and just saying, okay, I have no purpose in life forever, I decided to explore. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was working on my mindset of purpose and kind of staying open to possibilities. I didn't know where it would lead me, but the alternative, doing nothing, was way worse. So that's why I got curious. And I dedicated a large portion of my time to being curious. I started taking steps to really explore what lit me up, right? And this allowed me to think about my passions in life. And we all have things we enjoy that are our passions, but sometimes it's hard to see, I think, how they fit into like a greater purpose. I do think one of the first steps to feeling purposeful is to be willing to take time to dedicate to yourself and to be curious of yourself and others. And again, today that might sound a little bit like a luxury with everything going on in the world. The 3 Ps, I call them: politics, pandemic, and protests, right? We're living among the 3 Ps right now. They're real, they're here. And the 3 Ps are among a host of other things that might be keeping you stressed or worried, or at least busy or even overwhelmed right now, that can make us feel like, now is not a really good time to be thinking about myself. Now is not the time to be thinking about my purpose. That is, kind of selfish, right? It might feel selfish to be thinking about yourself and your purpose. But I'm here to say that I think it's the least selfish thing you can be doing. It's actually selfless. Because when you embody your purpose and you find your calling, you get to shine a light out into the world. And of course, that might sound a little cliche, but I do believe it's true, because if every person was tapped into their purpose and living in a more empowered, or at least purposeful way, I think this planet would undergo a major healing, right? So don't think for a minute that taking care of you, being curious how you can serve and live your purpose, is not worthy. I think it's one of the most important things you can do, even in times like these, and maybe most certainly in times like these. So the question is, how do you get curious? Well, first, you got to get out of your routine a little. I think many of us get into habits and unconscious routines. We don't really think about what we're doing or why we're doing it. We start to get more aware of life's moments. And when we do that, we can get curious. We can get curious about our feelings and our reactions to situations. And it's about beginning to notice the moments when maybe your ears perk up a little and you come more alive. You feel a little something different inside, right? Like, don't ignore that. There's something there. And I would go so far as to say, track the times, when family and friends either come to you for advice or a listening ear, or what is it that people turn to you for? Is there something they always ask, or a common theme that's coming through? Because those are little gems along the journey to your purpose. Maybe you pay attention to compliments or unusual comments that people make. Sometimes others can help us see more about ourselves. Things like, you always make me feel more calm and at peace. That is a gem. Or, wow, you're the only person I can talk to about this stuff. That is a gem. These can all be clues, I think, about finding our gifts and finding our purpose. And also find the cause that you feel compelled to fix, right? Most of us have been through some pain, hurt, shame along this journey. And some of us have been through a lot, right? Or we've been really close to other people who have experienced hard things in their lives. And that was hard for us too, right? And so when you're looking for your purpose, if you can turn to your own struggles or struggles you've been through with others, this can be an indicator. If you get fired up talking about certain issues or energized with ways of like strategizing to fix things, right? You might be onto something that has to do with your purpose. Again, it's all about being curious. Pay attention to things, right? Pay attention to things that might need healing, your reactions to them. Is there something you love to talk about or you know a lot about? And when you get to be curious, then you can say, okay, I noticed something. And you can embrace it and just see where the path leads. I know for so many of our wellness coaches in training that, this very process of healing themselves and then finding a new energy in that leads to wanting to help others to heal the same thing. And this really fuels their purpose. So think about what fuels you. All right, let's talk a little bit about next steps. Today we covered a lot as far as it relates to empowering your mindset of purpose. And the key takeaway today to finding your purpose is really to slow down, to take notice, to get out in the world to experience more, to be curious and to get in tune with yourself, right? Because if we don't do that, we're not operating on the level that we could be open to what our purpose is. So it's like we have to open that door a little bit. And we have to be willing to do some of the inner work, to do the listening, to even look back into our past, even if it's hurtful, right? And live back there for a little while and then bring it into the present moment too. And notice what's happening, not just on the surface, but on a deeper level, because that's where I think your purpose is living right now today. It's really easy to just go back to life, to go about your day, your week, your life, and not put into action even what you've just learned today, right? We're filling ourselves up with so much information, but we don't give ourselves that opportunity to digest it and then like bring it full circle into action. But all you have to do is think about your next step, and it can be just one small step. So choose one thing you want to do next to tap into your own purpose, and then lean into things that move your soul. Okay, so at the end of our episode, we move into our talk back time. So let's go now to our holistic wellness coaches in training who are out there joining us live. And I would love to hear from at least one person live on a breakthrough that you had today and what you're going to do next. So let's pop over and open up live. So I'm going to see if there's anything in the chat, but if you would like to share, now is the time. All you have to do is raise your hand. I'll give you a microphone. Let me peek out there. Heather, are you raising your hand? Okay, I couldn't tell. Hold on. Okay, Heather.
Hello, it's so lovely to see you and everyone else.
Great to see you, Heather.
I was making notes, and the thing I wrote and surrounded in red is, if you hide your light, you do a disservice to yourself and others. And I thought that's really powerful, because it made me think about, helping others as a wellness coach in training. But it was the fact that if you play too small and are driven by fear, as I've been for many years, that actually it's detrimental to you and to the other people that you can possibly help. So that was my little breakthrough.
I love it. Thank you for kind of pulling that little piece out. Sometimes I don't realize certain things that, that I said along the way, but I like how you pulled that out. And I think it's just, it is very interesting, especially for those of us here that are on the path to really, doing something big, following our purpose. I mean, that's no small feat.
Yeah.
And yet on the way, we're kind of asked to do a lot of things that are like, are you kidding? Well, I'm going to do a video. I'm going to do a workshop. Right? Because it feels like we're stuck in our own thing about it. But if we look at it, how you're saying, we're shining our light, we're following our purpose. Like, it's not about us. It's about those we're going to be doing service towards.
Yes.
If we can always keep that in mind, maybe put a little Post-it out on the desk. Thanks for sharing, Heather. What are you going to do next?
Oh, me?
Yeah. I like how you pulled that out. What are you going to do next? Do you have anything that's coming through?
Well, I am actually going to get a bit clearer on my niche, or my niche, as you might say. Yes.
Yeah. And that's
so I've been thinking about it for a while, but that really helps me get a sense of movement again, because I sometimes get a bit stuck and I stop and I've got to kind of start again, and that to me made me feel, yes, this is like a kick.
Yeah. And what if, that's cool. And what if you think about, sometimes we get so focused on the niche, but what if it's like thinking about the purpose and that ties into it? So it'll be interesting to see what comes through for you after this.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, keep us posted. Thanks for sharing, Heather.
Okay.
Anybody else want to share out there right away? Just go ahead, raise your hand. I can give you a microphone. Susan, were you raising your hand? Okay, hold on. Sometimes there's so many people out there, I can't see everybody at once. So I go to the next screen. I just saw something. Okay, Susan, you're on.
So I just thought I really liked when you said about the importance of getting curious, taking the time to do that, because I think in our everyday lives and when we're working and have busy jobs and taking care of our families, you're just in the motion and you don't do that. And I think, you just lose out on so much. Just recently I left my job after 20 years as a school psychologist, and that was kind of a big risk. And, but I just knew there was some other things out there, that I needed to look into. And when I did that, it was amazing. Just the opportunities that have been like all coming together. And I was telling a group of people last week that I was with, it's just amazing that just in a few short months, even what I'm learning here at IAWP, with the core structure, I was offered to teach a class at a university, and the class is creative leadership. And I have a psychology background and education. So I was thinking, I've never taught a creative leadership class. But now that I've read up on it and I'm teaching it, and I'm, 3 weeks into teaching the course, it's amazing that what I'm learning as a student here, that core philosophy, is really what I'm teaching the students now in their creative problem solving approach. It almost aligns perfectly. It's unbelievable that I'm almost sitting here in a situation like this where I'm a student learning one thing and I'm a teacher and I'm teaching, and it's so aligned of what I'm doing. And I guess I would have never had these opportunities if I didn't take that risk and just know that there's something else out there. So just wanted to share.
Oh, I love that story. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, kudos to you, right? Because you're almost sitting here now where you're in the middle of it. You're like, wait, how did this all happen? But you had to take that one next small step. And it does feel scary at the time. And you're like, what's on the other side, right? But then little things start coming together. So you're doing it. That's awesome. Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing. So glad you're here. Over in the chat, Dave is saying, I'm really stuck on this. I've been questioning my purpose in life for many years, even though I help people for a living, but dealing with autoimmune disease, type 1 diabetes, and Hashimoto's. Could this be my purpose, to help people with autoimmune diseases, even though I don't have the answers? That is a great question. Let's see if Dave is out there, or we can answer it without. Dave, if you want to join us live, I can take you live. Otherwise, I will just, you can unmute yourself, or I can just talk a little bit about this. You know, as we were just saying with Heather, you know, you get stuck on your niche, but the more you can think about your own journey and your own purpose, oftentimes it does align with your niche. And like the hard thing about it, Dave, and what I hear you saying is like, yeah, you feel stuck. And at the same time, you've been like going through this deep dive journey of your own healing with this autoimmune disease, right? And then you begin to think, yeah, you could do a totally different, you could help a totally different group of people. But what can be so powerful, and I think oftentimes is for wellness coaches, is aligning your purpose and your story with those you're going to help. And then it's almost like, okay, I see now why this happened to me, right? And it's not forced, but it's a reality that, wow, maybe part of the reason, maybe it's not the whole picture, but part of the purpose for me on this journey of having this autoimmune disease was that I could figure out how to heal it, and then I could actually show other people. And then it kind of changes the whole picture of it, right? Because if we stay stuck in why me, why has this happened to me, and we don't tap into the mindset of purpose, we don't always get to see those bigger pictures. So I love that you're just kind of opening up to this right now, it sounds like. And you're saying, okay, I don't have all the answers. That's okay, right? It's not about having all the answers. And I know that can be really hard, especially for you guys, and you're going through your training. You're like, hey, I have to have all the answers. I'm going to be this expert. But I want you to always remember one of our core philosophies here: be the guide, not the guru. And as much as we want to have all the answers, and as much as we will have many answers for people, and even Dave, if you had all the answers, we wouldn't necessarily want to put all the answers out there, right? What we want to do is to really be that guide for others on their journey. And so you don't have to have everything perfectly solved. It's really about being maybe just 1 or 2 steps ahead of somebody that you might help, right? And frankly, that's really refreshing on the journey, to have somebody who's actually on the journey with you. So keep that in mind as you kind of go through this process and see what comes up for you. Love to hear more from you as you digest some of this today. Let's see if there's any other questions out there. I'm going to pose a couple of thoughts to you guys. Does anybody out there feel like they totally know what their purpose is and they want to share it? Is anybody like, yep, I know my purpose? And I'm curious if there's just like, you've already kind of thought about this and you have a purpose, or you feel aligned with it. It's always fun to hear from people who are like, yes, this is mine. You can share it with us now. You can type it in the chat, or you can raise your hand, share it live. That's even more fun. Okay, I think a better question would be, does anyone feel like they don't know their purpose and want to share that? That's the flip side, right? Does anybody feel stuck right now with their purpose in any way, wanting to kind of share just where they are? It may be something that moved you one step further along the journey today. You can raise your hand if you're out there on video. Thiven is sharing, and I see Mikhaila, I will give you a mic in just a minute. Thiven is saying, not just giving love or receiving love, but being love. Can that be a purpose? Yeah, it can. Right? It kind of goes back to what we were saying before. Your purpose may not be exactly what you do every day. It's really about embodying what you feel that purpose is and how you bring it in to what you do every day. So for Thiven, you get to figure out how to be love in all that you do. And that is a journey. So thank you for sharing. Let's go over to Mikhaila out there. Hey, Mikhaila.
Hi.
How are you?
Okay.
Good.
I was just thinking, like, I would say I'm kind of in between I know and I have no idea. And I think, like, forever, I've always known that I meant to help people. But in your case, like how you said with the pharmaceuticals and stuff, you were noticing that it wasn't that, but it still kind of pushed you towards what it actually was. So for me, I've always kind of worked with people who have disabilities, or worked with like kids from troubled backgrounds and stuff like that. And it never was quite right. Like I liked it for a time, and then it would fizzle out and I would get burnt out really fast. And I would say now that I have been doing like practice coaching and just talking to people about life and stuff, since COVID and since finishing my certification, I've kind of, I don't know, it's just like the more you do, the more you kind of figure it out, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't say I totally know what my purpose is, but a good example I would say is now I find that I've always like hated public speaking, but now when I'm talking about wellness and managing stress and managing relationships with people, I can talk about that confidently. So it's like, maybe that is like, you just get little like sparks that you have to remember, or like notice things that come more easily. Because before I wouldn't talk, I don't know, I just wouldn't want to talk out loud to people about any of this kind of stuff. And now the more that you just kind of force yourself to do it, you notice like what comes more easily, and like that's more likely to be your thing. Because if I just had to talk about other stuff, I still would not want to stand up in front of a group of people and do that. But if it was to talk to like a group of young women about managing stress and not burning themselves out, I would think about it. So even though I'm not like 100% there yet, it's definitely like it happens over time and with the more stuff that you do, I think.
Yeah. I love that. People are going wild in the chat right now, Mikhaila. They're all like, agree with you 1,100%. And I think it's so interesting to kind of take that in, right? Because there's like, you think of things you have to like do, right? Like you said, public speaking, like that's not something you want to do. But when your purpose becomes so big that it outweighs like the fear of doing those things, that's when you start to really know you're onto something, right? Because what I hear from you is like, there's such an energy and a passion around helping these young women that you're willing to do something that feels uncomfortable. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's scary, but
yeah. But you, even today, you put a mic on today to say something. Like those are like the little things, you do them in like safe spaces and you're like, okay, wasn't that bad? So
yeah,
I love that you did that. I also love how you shared, like, you know, you had this other career where part of it, like helping people, like you're like, yeah, but maybe the context wasn't quite it, right? And that's why it's like, okay, we look back on all we've done and maybe like we hated a job, but was there like one little thing in there that you really loved, and you kind of start pulling those pieces out, and like you're on the journey of doing that, which has brought you to where you are today. So I love that you shared that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Keep it up. Keep up the great work out there. People are resonating with what you shared there. Dave is saying today has helped him to strive to take a step forward on his journey. Rachel says she knows she's getting closer to her purpose. It's very exciting. Same with Susan, getting closer, not quite there yet. Christina sharing that as a kid, she always wanted to be a teacher. She played school every day with her sister and friends, trying to teach them. They hated it, but she loved it. As an adult, she didn't feel the pull to be a conventional teacher, but she tried teaching English as a second language. It didn't sit well. She's never forgotten the teacher in her. And now that she's working with clients, and she can see that she's still a teacher in a sense and really enjoying it. I love what you shared, Christine, because when we're kids, right? And we think about, you know, again, what do you want to be when you grow up? We only have like 10 choices. They were like, okay, teacher, doctor, you know, nurse, whatever. There's only so many sort of archetypes that we get, right? And so like teacher is one of them. And that can lead us to believe, oh, we're meant to be a teacher. And suddenly we end up in that job and we're like, I don't like this at all. but it's really about the archetype of that role, right? So like what I love that you've kind of figured out here is that there's a teacher within you, but it can show up in many different ways. And you're kind of embodying that now. As I said earlier, that's the cool thing about becoming a wellness coach, right? Because here's someone like yourself who has a teacher within you. So you get to now archetype really and design how you're going to live your purpose through your passion as a coach. And maybe for you, that means you're going to be teaching, you're going to be leading classes and workshops. And like, that's really it. Or maybe it's about teaching people one-on-one. But I love that you shared kind of how that progressed for you from being a child to kind of where you are now. Vesela realized years ago that her purpose is to be a learner and teacher, but now she's changing the subject. She is learning and teaching. I love that. Putting it in kind of in that active form. Let's see, anybody else out there live who wants to share anything that resonated with them about today's workshop? Anything, breakthroughs coming through? Anything you want to share about what you're going to do next? Did I see a hand out there? If you are raising your hand, wave your hand as crazy as you can, because I'm flipping through the screens and I can't always see everybody. Debbie says she feels so great after doing a coaching call, but she can still get hung up on thinking that I don't know enough to help others, right? But she's starting to believe that if I'm feeling a strong need to help, then there are people out there who could benefit from working with you. I love that, Debbie. I think there's a lot to be said there. And you know what? Whatever path we end up going, even, we take a job doing something, we get to the job, and do we really know enough to do the job? No, maybe we got hired because we know something about a certain area and we have some skills and experiences, but really most of on the job is on the job training. And so you got to think about your coaching career kind of the same way, right? We don't think about that with other jobs and careers where we spend a lifetime maybe, or let's say even 10 years, a decade at a particular job where we learn a lot and we evolve and grow while we're there. What if coaching is the same thing, right? Some reason we put an expectation on ourselves that before we work with the client, we have to somehow already have 10 years of experience. What's up with that? Why are we doing that to ourselves? We're doing that partially because I think something about it, when it's our own practice and our own business, is putting this little bit of pressure on us versus, hey, I'm working for somebody else, right? So there's a little bit there, but also this idea of helping others and just thinking that we have to know it all is really kind of an old mindset, right? That a lot of us do carry around that, and especially when you think of even healthcare or other forms of getting support, right? People, kind of have, I always say, kind of the white coat syndrome. They're kind of telling you what to do. But that's the cool thing about coaching. You don't have to know it all. You just get to be the guide for someone. Again, it doesn't mean that you don't have a lot to share. You don't know a lot. But even if you do, that wouldn't allow the other person to kind of be empowered. So the empowering part is really embracing the fact that you don't know it all. Right? And you're starting to believe that you said that part out there already, that there could be other people will benefit working from you. You know what? And the truth is, Debbie, I'll say this, and we just saw this with Mikhaila earlier. Like she only kind of figured that out because she started working with clients and started doing some of this. She was like, kind of freaked, but she like did it. And like, that's going to be the same thing here too. You're like, okay, don't know enough. But then you're going to work with a coaching client and be like, wow, didn't know everything, but look what happened, right? So that's important. Those little next steps are what help to kind of build that confidence and start shifting our whole mindset around it. And hopefully after today's call, you're leaning more into your mindset of purpose, knowing that you're going to have to make mistakes along the way and do things that maybe feel uncomfortable, but your mindset of purpose will be greater than those things. Yumi says, sorry, I can't unmute due to background noise right now, but for her next step, she's going to challenge herself to expose herself more, to let the world know what she's doing, right? So that she can support people professionally. She's not always a good listener as a good friend. Okay. So sounds like your big next step for yourself is to be willing to put yourself out there, to let people know what your purpose is or what path you're on here, right? And sometimes that's hard to do. I think it's similar to what Debbie just shared, because we're like, I don't really want to tell everybody what I'm doing until maybe I'm officially certified, or I don't want to tell people until I've worked with 10 clients or until my website is done, right? Like we're waiting for someday. And I'm just going to say right now, someday ain't coming because there's always going to be a next thing. Right? There's always going to be, okay, I did the website. I did I got my certificate. I did this. There's always going to be a next thing. And so I love that you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to share a little bit more. And at the same note, don't overwhelm yourself and like, whoa, put a bunch of stuff out there at once, right? Because you might tip the scale too far. So it's kind of a balance. Like, what little next step could you share? Hey, everybody, I haven't told you about this new thing I'm doing, but I wanted to share that I'm a wellness coach in training. You can share small things as you go. And part of that process is for you, not just for the people you're sharing. Like you're wondering what people are going to say. It's really more for you to practice being vulnerable and putting yourself out there. So take those little small steps as you go. Sounds like you're going to do it. Love it. I got a heart sign. Woo-hoo. All right, everybody. I don't see anybody else out there. It was so fun being with everybody today. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for being here. And I look forward to seeing everybody back here again next time. Take care. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Live Well, Dream Big. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. And I want to invite you to take your next step toward living well and dreaming big by downloading the Live Well, Dream Big lifestyle book. It's the ultimate guide to becoming your best self and living life on your own terms. You can grab your complimentary copy by going to the link in the show notes or heading directly to iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide. That's iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide.